but it's
That's
it's
typical
like
Dallas fashion. It's some type of shit like that where it's like, somebody does something wrong when they're not supposed to, when it's like just
it's always something. Drive killers, drop passes. Like you just look like a bag of ass. You look unprepared. You look T's aren't crossed, I's aren't dotted. You just look unmotivated,
mhm.
unprepared, uncharacteristic.
I want to have a conversation with you guys about how the Cowboys season ended, how it went overall. I mean, maybe we can get into some of the playoff stuff. We're recording this on the 21st. No, I'm sorry, 24th of January. So we're through the divisional round, and we can speak on that a little bit later. But really, what we're here for is the Cowboys and however we feel the season went and how it ended. So, being that this is unrehearsed under the Teague's Take logo, like we don't have, I didn't give you guys any kind of show notes or any kind of topics that we were going to cover. I just kind of texted you guys and said, hey, let's sit down and talk about the Cowboys. I suppose where we can start is just how you feeling? Like what are the thoughts that go through when you think about this, how the Cowboys exited this season?
Dude, like I told you, I feel like I'm still processing it. I feel like coming down to the way the game ended, to the referees, to Dak Prescott. I mean, it's just so much has happened at the conclusion of this season that it's like, I just feel I don't have any closure yet. I don't have any closure. I feel like it was a good season on paper, 12-5. That's a good season in my opinion. But there's just a few blimps of improvements that I still think we need.
Well, what do you think, Nick? Because I know we've kind of had these conversations
Yeah.
before, and I still don't actually know how I really am going to get that closure here. Like when I left the stadium, my dad and I were at the game, and you talk about what was the atmosphere like, and it was one of the loudest that I've been a part of when the game started. We definitely had home field advantage, even though when we were pulling up to the stadium, there was a lot of red walking into there, and I was like, man, I don't know if I feel like this is going to be another Broncos game, and then we get in there, and that wasn't the case. But the problem was, our offense started off so slow that it started really loud. You wanted to cheer, and then it kind of just fell off because as you're sitting there, there's like nothing to cheer for, right? And then because the 49ers get the ball and they just walk down the field and score. And at no point, I think maybe there was like one or two tackles for a loss, maybe second and 9, and you're getting hype, and then they just it was with ease. So then it gets quiet. And then through the second half, once the second half started, and then you have the 3 and out, basically. I think you get on third down, you had 2 false starts and then a sack.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can hear a pin drop. You're like, all right, so this is what we're doing. And then they rough the punter and everybody goes crazy and whatnot. But then the offense just kept giving you reasons to sit down, right? The defense was really the only reason the people were standing up trying to get loud. But then third down conversion after third down conversion, everybody's, you know how it goes. So, Nick, I don't want to really talk about, I didn't want to talk about the stadium and how it was during that last series, but do you have anything that might help us feel better and close this out a little bit more?
Man, if I wish I could help you guys and close this out, but I don't know. Like it stings. It still stings, and it just stings differently. I mean, maybe you guys can agree with that. Like it just didn't feel like '07 Cabo. you're like, all right, these guys are playing too much. Or the fumbled snap in 06 in Seattle. You're like, oh, if he just holds on to the snap. You kind of still walked away, I did at least, from those losses like, well, I mean, we really shot ourselves in the foot, and you kind of just walk away mad but inspired a little bit because you're like, well, if you just kind of like eliminate some mistakes. 2014, Dez caught it, right? Like all this little plethora of moments. 2016, man, Aaron Rodgers is just a dude. I mean, who throws it on the run to his left? And you're like, that was a really good team. This one was just different. Like, you're right. Like, maybe the stadium description you gave, bro, was just perfect because, like, everyone's there. Barely any red. Like you said, you were like, man, is this going to be like Denver? No, it wasn't. People were hyped. Defense is ready. And just fall flat. And I listened to y'all's show yesterday that y'all streamed, and it's just Kellen Moore's offense has just been like this though since he's been the play caller. I mean, this was the Denver loss. What the way they lost, San Francisco controlled the clock. Offense was nowhere to be found until the end.
Yeah,
And I think that's why it stings because. Well, it's why it stings because this is how we've lost every game all year. You know, playing good teams like it, like just the same, and you're like,
Coming
I
up
literally
flat.
can't believe. Yeah, I really can't believe we lost the same way every game this year. That's I think why it hurts because it's like really every game you just could have went back to a blueprint and not did that.
Yeah, well, you know, something, you know, I try not to be on Twitter too much. And I don't tweet much. I tweeted yesterday because of the Bills Chiefs game, kind of about what I feel about NFL overtime. And that was just a wild thing. Like this whole weekend of playoffs were just absolutely insane, just pandemonium.
Yeah. All the way to the end.
Yeah,
I mean, really though. But that's how it should be.
Right. Exactly. That's what you want out of the playoffs, right?
Yeah, very competitive.
But you know, with the Cowboys, it was just, you know, you look back at the schedule. So on Twitter, I'm seeing all of these Cowboys fans, and it's fine. You know, I expect this, where they're saying like we're the most disrespected 12-5 team, and like on the surface, they're right. But then as I was telling Nick, I was telling my dad, especially after the game, like immediately after the game, my dad and I are driving back home, riding in the car. And I was like, man, these dudes won 12 games. 6 of them don't count basically. Cause it's, you beat the Eagles twice. You beat the Giants twice and you beat Washington twice. Like, all right. And Washington, you really didn't even like beat like that.
Right.
So
the first time. Then the second time they were like, well, I'm a 50 burger on them, but it's like, oh, you didn't have Chase Young either. So
right.
I mean,
yeah. So you look back at those and you say, all right, so half of those wins, okay, we're not really counting that one. Then you look and you say, all right, well, they beat the Falcons. They smacked the Falcons around. And then you look at the Falcons. They're like, well, the Falcons are, I don't know what the record ended up being, but they won more games than they should have this year. And
Patterson went off, dude. Cordell Patterson.
Yeah.
Man.
Then let's see. So who else did we beat? We beat the Chargers, and I remember after the Chargers game, I said that they should have lost to the Chargers because the Chargers took 24 points off the board themselves. The Chargers out Cowboys the Cowboys that game.
Yeah, and just to stick to that, look how their season ended. They out Cowboys themselves in the Raiders game. They could have been in the playoffs. Like, it was a very equivalent exit from, because it was a playoff game, that Raiders game for them.
Yeah.
But it was a very equivalent exit, only a lot more of a dumb exit because you just leave your head scratching on the decisions from that game for the Chargers.
Yeah. And I'm missing a couple wins here.
Pats.
Okay. The Pats and the Saints.
Yeah.
And the Pats was the first time I legitimately saw the Cowboys win the game and say, okay, there's something there that we can point to. Mm-hmm. They dug deep and they ended up finding a way to win the game. Now, I mean, we can say, well, the Pats ended up giving up 50 and completely being uncompetitive with the Bills. But, at the time, I thought that was a very, very good win. That was a gutsy win, and they pulled it out. But I think short of that, and I'm just kind of going through here. The Panthers, it's like, okay,
That was closer than it should have been, really.
But
Yes.
and the Panthers were 3-0. They were undefeated by the time that that matchup.
they were undefeated. They had the best defense at the time. But what really irritated me, because I was at that game too, what really irritated me was that Sam Darnold had 2 rushing touchdowns, and one of them was a read option. That was they called a play for Sam Darnold to walk in, and they ran they had no respect for the Cowboys defense at that moment, that they ran the option. They ran an option with Sam Darnold. Who does that? And he scored. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And then they beat the Vikings, which the Vikings had, their season was a roller coaster. They were good enough to be up by 29 points against, good teams, but they were also good enough to blow a 29-point lead. They were both that good and that bad at the same time. And you had a backup quarterback and you beat them by 4. So, that one is more of a, what do you make of that game? Because you didn't even have your starting quarterback, but you're glad you won the game. And then you go out and you get beat up by the Broncos after a bye week. And then you play the Chiefs. And
oh god, the Chiefs game.
I don't even know. I mean, we had 9 points, which I think was probably 3 field goals, wasn't it?
That was ugly. I was at that game, and you were talking about the stadium and how they were pulling for the Cowboys. It was so loud for the Cowboys starting off, and it was the same way even at an away game for the Chiefs. But it slowly got quiet, and it's anytime the Cowboys come out flat at the beginning, they lose that momentum. And they would be lucky if, something happened on defense to then pick it back up, get the rhythm back for offense. But, that Kansas City game was tough to watch. The defense held them down to 19 points. I mean, that's solid against the Chiefs. Look where they're at now.
Yeah. I mean, we had talked about that one too. I said, if you would have told me, because I want to look at the stats again, because I don't remember off the top of my head on what Mahomes' stats were, but so let me pull up the box score.
I got you. He was 23 for 37, 260, 1 interception, so no touchdowns.
Yeah, so if you would have gave me that stat line, you said he threw no touchdowns, threw a pick, and the Chiefs scored 19 points at home.
Mm-hmm.
I expect. I don't care what team that is. You are supposed to beat the Chiefs. You hold them 19 points. At least
find the end zone once, I don't. And I mean, granted, we didn't have Cooper. Cooper was out that game due to COVID. That's one of those. That's tough. And then I think CD got hurt the second quarter going into halftime. So going into the second half, we were short of both receivers, but it's still okay, if you're supposed to be that team, you have to be able to elevate when you need to, especially when your defense is giving their all to hold them down to 19. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. When it comes to offense, it's it gets streaky when they come off hot against an easy team. They feel like big dog, they feel like they can dominate. But then when they face someone that's just as good, or maybe even a notch under that, the Vikings, it's even though they got the win, and even a lot of these competitive teams, it was a close win. It's I didn't see them put it on a winning team. Really kind of pound down on.
Well, they didn't. They were 6-0 against the NFC East, and I think were they? I don't know, but I know their record is not good against teams with winning records. I know that much. I don't know what the record was, but it wasn't good. And then you lose to the Broncos, which is a game that you shouldn't lose. And then you lose on Thanksgiving, which is kind of just a routine anyway. That's just that's just what the Cowboys do. They lose on Thanksgiving.
An automatic L.
But you shouldn't be losing to the Raiders on Thanksgiving.
No.
Yeah.
and not even going into overtime. And that was like crippled the Raiders too. I want to say by that point, maybe John Gruden was already gone. So it's like, I don't know.
I
These
mean,
are
you give up. I mean,
opportunities
you
where it's
just.
like,
I mean, think about it. You, they scored on the third play of the game, man. Jason Jackson catches a 56-yard pass 3 plays into the game.
in Deshaun Jackson fashion against the Cowboys. No matter what jersey he's in, you're going to find him deep up the middle. Tragic.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's another one of those things. Is like, Tony Pollard runs a kickoff back during that game, 100 yards, and you think, well, if you're scoring on special teams too, you're probably winning. It's like, but psych, you run that back and you're still down. You're still down by 5 points. So, what's really going on here? So I think, all this to say that I think you can really look back at the season and say all of the things that went wrong in the San Francisco game were evident all year long.
Yes.
And
100%.
I think that I had even gotten to the point because I didn't want to be on the show being the Cowboys hater, because that apparently I've gotten that reputation. My dad even said it yesterday, or I think it was yesterday. He was like, he's very unbiased is his nice way of saying it, which I like to think I am, because as I was telling Nick, everybody knows that I'm Alabama first. That's where my passion is. When they lose, I get upset. When the Cowboys lose, I call that Sunday. So
it's sad.
And
it's sad
and there's a track record for that. There's a track record for that. Exactly. Yeah. And the downside of it, it's gotten to the point now, especially after this past Cowboys loss against San Fran. It's like in the back of my head, I was like, oh my God, what is Stephen A. going to say? It's gotten to the point to where I'm thinking about what Stephen A. Smith is going to say. Like how he's going to laugh, how he's going to say, I told you so, how he's going to say whatever it is. And it's like, I mean, he's right. He's right. It's like we fall under pressure. And I mean, I don't know what that is. I don't know. I mean, it's something that's mental, because I think when you have best on best, the Cowboys have an advantage on a lot of these teams. But it's like if Dak doesn't come off hot, or, I don't know. I think that's still something that I'm dealing with internally, trying to figure out what is the missing piece to get it all together. Because anytime they play a tough team, I start sweating. Whereas maybe if I was a Green Bay fan, I could say, if we were playing a number one team in another division, we might have a chance. We might be competitive. And it's like, why can't we, what's that missing?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at Green Bay's roster and you're like, Green Bay's roster on paper is not, it ain't it. They got Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and like
look at that game. I mean, look at that Bills and Chiefs game yesterday. At no point did I feel that none of those guys could score. Like, you knew first quarter, second quarter, even when they had like there was that lull before halftime, 14-14, where it teased the defensive game. That game had everything, but like at the end, specifically under 2 minutes, you could see Buffalo, and it's like, man, you could see Buffalo's trying to run it out. They don't want to give it to Mahomes, but then they score, and it's like, man, that's plenty of time for Mahomes. Hill scores. Allen scores again. Like none of those times you felt none of them could score. You knew, there's plenty of time. Like Derrian said, you don't get that confident getting this with the Cowboys offense. Bro, I get nervous 3rd and 1.
Yes.
Because we can't run the ball. So that means we're going to throw it. Is Dak going to get pressured? How good of a pass is it going to be? So it's like, and then you look at these other guys, man, and I don't know, I'm maybe starting to self-reflect because the evidence been there, and I don't want to talk crap because I like Dak, but that's the problem. Hear me when I describe him. I like him as a person. He seems like a good leader, a guy you want to be around. Is that enough to win a Super Bowl in 2022 NFL? You can't just be a good guy. You got to kind of be a dude.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Burrow. Like you got to be a bro to win a game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so I want to share a couple of text messages that I sent my dad yesterday during the Bills and Chiefs game. because I was just kind of, I should have tweeted these things instead of just randomly texting my dad, but whatever. So, the one I sent at 6:50, I said, I understand Dak's injury, but the offense was much better when they could run Dak like they run Josh Allen.
I think so.
We've lost like a big part of what the offense was because ain't nobody there's no more read option on 3rd and 1. Like, we're not running a read option. That's not
we also can't run the ball, period. I miss the days when we could run Zeke like we used to. Like we can't run the ball at all. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of pressure for a guy like Dak. And again, no offense, but like you kind of need to run the football.
Yep.
Yeah, not between the tackles. Not between the tackles. There's no way. It was tough this season.
So an hour later, I don't remember what was happening in the game, but I just texted him and I said, absolute madness. And my dad responded, some team needs to take notes on what a championship QB looks like, LOL. And I responded, it's a shame I'm watching all of these games and my eyes tell me that Dallas just had no business being in these playoffs. And then he said, yeah, Dallas was the worst of them all. And then I said, easily. And then I said, well, I take that back. The Eagles did make the playoffs. So they were the second worst because the Eagles were not that great of a team. But watching those games, as far as like, college football playoff committee and like who's in, who's not in. Like, if you just had to rank the 7 teams and be like, all right, or the 14 teams really, and be like, all right, who's going to be the bottom 2 seeds? Like, I feel like on average, Dallas might be the underdog against all of those teams except for the Eagles. And maybe the Steelers, because the Steelers weren't that great either. But of the teams that I watched this weekend, I didn't think Dallas could have beaten any of them. I didn't think they could beat Green Bay to begin with. But all of the teams that I watched this weekend looked like teams that had a chance to actually win the Super Bowl. And I'm still kind of shocked that San Francisco went in and beat them like that. Not that they weren't talented. I mean, I just saw that first half and like one team was clearly acclimated to playing in the cold and the other team was still like dropping balls because their hands was cold and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, man, this might be a different story if they were playing in California, but they're not. So, but whatever. My eyes told me that Dallas wasn't ready to compete with any of these teams this weekend.
Right. And I mean, okay, so even with San Francisco, I feel like they are still a team to find a way. Mm-hmm. They're another team that compared to roster, they don't really have as many solid players as I feel that Dallas
deep
does. Though.
Yeah,
That's true. They're deep with playmakers. I think that there's something to say when it's like Garoppolo can just throw it to any of his skilled players, even their fullback. And yeah, it's just a creative offense. But against Green Bay, it was defense and special teams that really took the game. Mm-hmm. But it's like they find a way to do it. And maybe the Cowboys could have possibly, and I could be wrong, but could have possibly competed against Tennessee. Who lost?
No. Well, the reason I say no is because Tennessee had 9 sacks. If they would have had 9 sacks against Dak would be on a stretcher somewhere. They were killing Joe Burrow.
Yeah, well, and they lost anyway. So I mean, nonetheless, it's like I don't know. There's something with them.
We just. I mean, would you guys agree that we just match up really bad against just for lack of a better phrase, Bama style, old school type football? Like the Niners and Titans are significantly different from all those other teams, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they can run the ball.
Like, because all the rest are all like, I don't want to say finesse like in a bad way, but they spread them out. They're a little bit powerful on the pass. And I think we actually might match up better with that. I mean, we clearly did with the Chiefs, but like we just look at Denver. Denver just ran it on us. They didn't have nothing really fancy to do because they really couldn't. They're like, well, we're just going to run the ball. And they might have felt that way too in that game. You know what? I think we're stronger up front. We can run. Look at San Francisco. They did. They got creative and ran it how they did, called
Mhm.
plays, booted it out. Like they passed it creatively, and we just looked
Yeah, I mean,
out coached.
San Francisco is finding ways to win, and then the caveat I have to that is they're finding ways to win, I think, in spite of Jimmy Garoppolo. Not that Jimmy Garoppolo is like playing poorly. It's just like whenever he throws an interception, it's like the worst time to throw interception.
Dude, yeah.
The only reason the Cowboys were even in that game is because he airmailed it to Anthony Brown on the sideline.
Oh, yeah.
And you're just like, because that is when like the stadium erupted again, because everybody's kind of sitting down like, here we go. They done got the ball back. We're down 2 touchdowns. Tom's running out. Like, it's going to take a miracle. And then it's like, oh, Jimmy G's like, oh, y'all are too quiet. Boom, here you go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you think he's going to run it back. And then, I don't know, did we come out with a field goal on that? Because I feel like we did, because I thought about our conversation, Nick, a while ago when we were standing outside the restaurant about like turnovers turning into points.
Yeah.
And I was like, I feel like we turned that one into a field goal again. And we had a short field. Like we were in plus territory to start with, and we still only came away with a field goal. I think it looks like Nick's probably checking me on that.
I'm going to look because I'm curious because, that I forgot I told you that we were not number one in the NFL, yet we were up there for a while with turnovers, but we were terrible at like points after turnovers. Mm-hmm. We were not good, and that's so sad when you hear that. So when did we get the pick? Because there's a field goal at the top of the fourth quarter, and then Dak got a 5-yard run with 8 minutes left.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. It was.
I have to full play-by-play it.
Yeah, and I'm sure I can probably find it. If I can find the.
Oh, we scored a touchdown.
We did. And what did that cut the game? What did that cut it to?
23-17.
Oh, all right.
So we had gotten 10.
That's clutch.
We got 10 and then got the pick, scored a touchdown. So, all right.
Who scored?
Right. Dak ran it in.
Dak ran that one in. Okay.
Yeah.
So then you get – okay, so let's talk about the end of the game.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
We get – I mean, you've got – I forget. We had 32 seconds left in the game. You get the ball on the 20. And they ended up getting 56 yards. So then Dak scrambles for however many yards it is, and he slides with 14 seconds left on the clock, at least in the stadium. I don't know what it said on the broadcast, but in the stadium.
14 seconds by the slide? Okay.
Or no. I'm sorry. There was 14 seconds when they ran the play.
Yeah, okay. Because it was like maybe 2.
He slid with 4 seconds left on the clock.
Okay.
And then, for everybody, I'm sure everybody's seen it by now, but then, he hands to the center puts it down. Ref's running down the field, tries to slide in between, runs in the back of Dak, touches the ball. The ball is snapped with 2 seconds on the clock. And it's downed with no time left.
Oh, is that what it said in the stadium?
Snap with 2 seconds left?
Because on the broadcast, it was 0.
It was like no time. Yeah.
When he snapped it, there was no time?
Yeah, and that's why they called it.
But I could now understand why the fans were pissed then, because I mean they were throwing shit. Like, yeah, it's one thing to lose, but like if you're telling me legitimately that stadium clock said 2 seconds, I'd be probably pretty upset.
Yeah,
too.
I do.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be
Okay.
like,
So okay.
Conspiracy going on. Like,
so it's one of those things. You don't have the like in basketball where they have the tenths of a second. That ball, it at least because how refs do the delay game. They have to see it's 0, and then you got to look down and see if the ball is snapped. To my eye, it looked like somewhere in between 1 and 2 seconds is when the ball was snapped. Now, in my mind, there was no doubt that he spiked it with all zeros on the clock. That part is not up for debate to me. He spiked it with no time left, but the ball was snapped with what the clock said was 2 seconds, but it was clearly less than 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. And for me, like I wasn't sure like where to be upset. I was just confused because like I understand what they were trying to do. I saw the Raiders do it. The Raiders did it and ran it to perfection. The problem is that Dak slid. So he slides and the ball has to go back to where he started the slide. So when he gave the ball to the center actually put the ball 2 yards ahead of where it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So that's why the ref's trying to get there, and he has to pick up the ball and move it 2 yards back. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, all right, Dak is a smart dude. He knows how much time's left on the clock. You can't spike it. Like, fine. If you want to snap it, that's fine, but you can't spike it. You just got to throw this one in the end zone and hope for it. And that's not what happened. I mean, I'm looking at the clock and I was like, no, don't spike it. Boom, he throws it into the ground and looks up like there was supposed to be a second left.
I was wondering, to be honest, I understand. I'll defend the play call, whatever. Mike McCarthy wants to get up there in a press conference and say, I defend the play call all day, whatever. He could say what he wants. I'll play along and defend it. I'm wondering why they didn't run that dumbass play they did at the beginning of the game on third down where they threw it to Cedric Wilson and he tries to lateral back to Zeke. I've watched that clip a lot of times. That scramble, there was receivers on the left. He could have did it and overthrew. Oops, out of bounds. You would have had, 6 seconds left on the clock? I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know why that play wasn't ran. You could have did that. You just did it earlier. And that's along on my, as JT calls it, the soapbox rant. This is where I start getting mad at Kellen Moore. Because there's things that are sprinkled in that looks like they make sense. But it doesn't look like they make sense because there's no consistency. Like, you're creative against Atlanta. You run a screen to CeeDee Lamb with 2 linemen outside lined up as receivers. You never came back to that play ever again in the season. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of this with this play calling.
Yeah, and so and I'm actually not upset really about the end of the game, because I mean that happens, and as soon as he took off running, that was the first thing I thought was like, man, they're gonna run out of time. This is gonna be, I don't know if you remember this, Derrian. This is gonna be a real throwback. We were at Javon's house. Ole Miss is playing LSU, and I want to say it was I want to say it was Jamarcus Russell did the same thing, spiked it with no time left, and everybody was all mad at Les Miles for telling him to spike it, and there was except that in that case, when you get a first down, the clock stops. The clock, They got a first down. The clock was stopped at 1 second. So you knew damn well you couldn't spike it with 1 second, but they did it anyway. But that was the first thing that went through my head. The second thing was after the game is over and the refs ran off and everybody's pissed. I couldn't help but think about when we had the ball with 2 minutes and 51 seconds left and 3 timeouts. And you come away with 0 points then. Or a field goal or whatever it was. Like, you needed a touchdown then. And like, if you're going to have a shot to win the game, you need to be able to score if you got 2 minutes and 51 seconds and 3 timeouts. And I think we turned it over on downs. Yeah, that was that.
That was the 4th down. Yeah. Well, no.
It was 4th and 11. That's the one that he threw behind Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson was running a corner route, and he Cedric Wilson's running this way, and the ball is behind him, and he's trying to turn around, and everybody was like, it was like, oh, if you have that, if you're gonna throw it deep on 4th and 11, I'm throwing it to CD, and I'm like, well, I mean, CD just dropped like 8 passes, not really. I know,
passes, but look who's been hot, and look who's not. But I also think during that last drive, like you said, within those 2 minutes, it's penalties And I don't know if that fourth down conversion with that fake punt and then that delay of game on that first down. I don't know if that was within that.
Okay, now that was weird.
But that play, I'm like, that's not playoff play. That's
Hey, now
I
can't blame.
I didn't understand that.
I can't blame the Cowboys for that punt debacle. Now that was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. The only explanation that I got was from McCarthy's press conference, which I don't know, maybe he embellished a little bit, but just being in the stadium, I'm sitting there again. Don't punt it. Don't punt it. We can't punt it. Like we look terrible. Don't punt it. They bring the punt team out there, and I'm like, oh, all right, fine, we're gonna punt it. And then they run the fake punt. Works.
Awesome.
They clearly had a second, like it was a two call. They clearly called two plays. And what ends up happening is, for some reason, the refs thought that Dallas was substituting. So they held up play. It wasn't that Dallas didn't know what they were doing, and you saw Robbie Anger, or is his name Robbie Anger?
Brian Anger.
Brian Anger running around kind of like, what am I supposed to be doing? But they held up play. The refs held up play and allowed San Francisco to substitute. So what ends up happening is there was confusion by the Cowboys punt team that's about to run this play because they can't run it. San Francisco substitutes their entire punt return team for their actual defense. So now the coaching staff is standing there like, wait, what the hell? Like, what is going on? Why do they get to substitute? So then there's 14 seconds left on the play clock, and they're like, well, we're not going to be able to run the play that we called with the punter in the game against their actual defense. So we're going to have to run out our offense. But then, because the offense actually substituted, they held up play again to let...
You're not going to burn a timeout.
San Francisco.
Game.
Right. To let San Francisco then substitute. And then once they get out the way, they don't have enough time to snap the ball. And everybody's like, what is this? So McCarthy said that there was a player, I guess, that had stepped onto the field in celebration, and the refs thought that he was coming in as a substitute on the first down. So they held up play, even though the guy never actually came into the game. San Francisco substitutes, and then Dallas substitutes. So San Francisco was supposed to get another chance to substitute, and then they ran out of time, which I didn't see. All I saw was they were holding up the game for no reason until the second time when Dallas supposedly substituted. So I'm still kind of hazy on that whole thing.
So from Mike McCarthy's point, it sounds like it still comes down to discipline. The fact that a player was celebrating, didn't know where they were on the line and stepped in.
I guess, but I mean, like the guy didn't run onto the field though. He's not like on the numbers.
But that's typical like, Dallas fashion. It's some type of shit like that where it's like, you know, somebody does something wrong when they're not supposed to. When it's like I don't know. Just do your role.
Right.
Just do your role.
The penalties too. All the holding calls. All the defensive holding calls. Like it's always something. Drive killers. Drop passes. Like you look like, and this is this phrase, like you just look like a bag of ass. You look unprepared. You look T's aren't crossed, I's aren't dotted. You just look unmotivated, unprepared, uncharacteristics. You got people getting mad. You got Randy Gregory throwing.
Oh my God, he's a perfect example.
Like you just don't look like a professional. Like you don't look like a 12-5 team. You look like the wild card team.
But you deserve to lose.
So it's like a mix of, but it's all that, bro. Like it's like I keep going back to the play call, but Dak too, not making decisions like or they keep calling.
Well, he didn't play well. Dak was throwing bad
No,
ball
he did
after
not.
bad ball after bad ball. Like
He was.
he's throwing them into dirt
Fingers
kind of
in the
bad ball.
ground. Yeah, dude.
But he's also not like throwing it to the right dude either. Because was it yesterday, bro? Oh man, I wish I would have saw that live, the one yesterday, because I would have typed a comment. What's her name? I have it saved. Dang it, no, I didn't. I clicked out of the video. Camber,
Yeah.
who was in there with y'all. She's great. I wish I was like commenting because I watched that Kurt Warner thing too. What she brought up, and one of the things that she didn't bring up with it was we just kept running this dumbass China concept. We're outside, outside receivers doing like a 2 and in or a 5 and in, something real short. Inside guys going a corner. And Kurt Warner's like, I don't know why they're doing that because they're not falling for it. Like no one's open. Or if they are doing it, Dak looks the other way at the trip side, not even the side that you're supposed to read. Or they send the motion where Zeke goes out of the backfield to motion, so it's 4 on one side and 1 on one. Dak doesn't throw the 1 on one, throws it to Zeke covered, gets minus a yard. Like, so it's like a lot of stuff like that happened in the game too, where it's like, what are you calling? Like, it's one thing to have a bad throw, but what are you calling? And I don't think Dak knew what was going on. Not only did he not throw it good, but a lot of those concepts kept coming back. I specifically kept saying that China one because that happened a lot, where Dak just did, like, he literally looked like he didn't know who was the read. You know what I mean? And we just stall and punt, and crowd's not into it. It just dominoes into just bad news. You know, like.
Right, and I mean, you're right, and I feel that if Dalton Schultz isn't open as his safety net, it's an incomplete pass. It's an incomplete pass, or it goes to CD, and there's a holding penalty on Connor Williams. So it's like, what do you want? What can we do? Somebody tell us.
And I know you didn't see the show yesterday, but I was not. I was more kind than I could have been yesterday about Dak's play, because I was saying like, hey, because we had talked about who would we prefer if you could only pick one between Cedric Wilson and Michael Gallup, like, who you taking? And I was like, well, I told my dad, I said, you already know what answer I have because I've been saying this for years now. And surprisingly, most everybody agreed with me because of like how he fits into the offense. Now, I went a little bit further on what I really feel about Michael Gallup, which I won't do here. But I had said, like, we were because I know how much everybody loves Troy Aikman as a commentator. I don't really have a problem with him. Everybody says that he's too hard on the Cowboys, whatever. I think that's just I think that's just Cowboys fans not liking him.
I have family, and they're like the regular Cowboys fans that like just they're very emotional. Which is nothing wrong with that, but they don't like him either. And I was like, well, you don't want to talk to my boy JT because he's way meaner.